Oh, okay, okay. There's no problem. Yeah. Mm. Is there anything else, Diana? Is there
No, no, no,
anything?
no. No, no, it's up. I'm handing over to you now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Welcome back. I think, yeah, there's a hand. Let me see.
Yes. Bintina.
Hi.
Hello.
I was just wondering if maybe we had collected the data on the certificate, if it's an option, what's going to happen? There was a vote you were doing in the WhatsApp kuuliza watu wenye wanataka certificate of participation.
Okay. Let's discuss that after the session so that we don't prolong it from starting anymore.
All right, thank you.
Sure, sure.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, I think that is clear. I think that's Diana's department, so I think she'll handle that. So, guys, I'm sorry I'm taking you so fast in this course. People are not supposed to learn this fast. Become a software developer in 2 weeks. Almost impossible unless you are truly gifted. Yeah, even if you're gifted, you still need a little bit of time to catch up with things. But at least now you're familiar with a few things. You can know where you start, even as you continue. So I think we're going to continue from where we left. Let me just confirm where we left. I'm supposed to be sharing my screen. Okay, just a minute. Yeah. Is my screen visible? Is it okay? Today I'm using a different internet, so I hope it's not too shaky. I hope it will be fine. Yeah, I think where did we leave last time? I think we were talking something about yeah, JavaScript chaining methods. I think we were supposed to talk about logical operators. Oh yeah. I was doing something about a map. I don't know if it was a map or it was a filter. I think it was a filter, and it was a bit buggy. Yeah, let's go and check on that and fix that before we come back. So, so um, I think this is the one. Yeah. So I was writing code. I think the last time we were here, and I don't know. I was so tired. Let's see if today we can figure it out. I don't know which one was it. It was something to do with arrays. Yeah, I was showing you how. Yeah, there's something different about my setup. I was just having fun today, trying to make my text editor look good. So I changed a few things. Yeah, but it's still the same. I'm still using VS Code. Yeah. So I was writing code here, and it was a bit buggy. It was not printing out the same thing. So what we were trying to do with this line of code, line 4, let me increase the size, at least we can see. So what line 4 was doing here, line 4 was basically removing students who had marks lower than 50. So this is what line 2 was doing. It was using an inbuilt function in JavaScript called filter. And then on this second part, we were trying to make our own implementation. We were trying to somehow try to mimic what it's trying to do in the background. And we were implementing it, and it was giving us wrong values. So I think, yeah, we can try and find out why that happens. I hope today we can debug it. So this is a function. We have a section where I'm going to talk about functions, but I'll not. There's something else I need to tell you about functions actually, apart from what you're seeing here. So this is a function, basically a block of code. This is how we group code. We take a huge code and we break them into sections that we can reuse. Instead of rewriting the whole thing, you can just put it in a function. So typically, this is how a function would look like. A function, when you want to declare it the same way we normally use const when declare name, And then after mentioning the name of that given function, this part in the bracket is taking the input, and then the curly bracket encloses what we want to happen when this function is called. So here our function was taking in the marks. So this marks here is an array. So let me just let me just write some comments so that we know what you're doing. So you can say that the function takes in a list of basically it's not a list, but I'm using the word list so that at least most of you we can be on the we can be on the same level. I'm using a list, but basically this is basically an array, specifically an array. So the function takes in an array, and when it takes an array, what we expect it to give us, we expect it on the execution, we expect it to remove the values that are less than 50. That is what we expect. So in the first part of so we use this this is like a placeholder. What we normally call this is a parameter. So this is a parameter. Parameter is the placeholder. But when you call it and you give it something, now this becomes an argument. So initially, before you do anything and you're just declaring, you're just giving it a shape, you're saying, okay, our function will expect something. So let us call that thing max. Yeah. Let us call that thing max. So this placeholder here that we're using, usually we call it a parameter. And then on the while executing, the one that we give it is called an argument. Yeah, those are a few technical terms you can use when trying to illustrate to somebody your code. So what happens is that max is taken in, and then something happens. So on the first line of the function, we are creating a new array. So we are just initializing a new array. I had to give it an equal sign and initialize it as an empty array because you're not allowed to do this in JavaScript. Yeah. As you can see, there's an error here. It is telling us that const declaration must be initialized. So you could hover on top of it and you will see the error, but I think I have an extension that does this. I have so many extensions. In fact, I've just installed almost 10 today. I don't know. Yeah, while trying to do PHP. So if it does not appear like this in your editor, yeah, don't worry. It's just an extension that I'm using. You can Google for it and find one. So you can do this. You can't just declare something to be const and you don't give it and you don't initialize it. When you use const, you have to initialize and declare. So we declare that it is an empty array. So basically, array is just something we use to store given list of things. So you can store a list of things, especially when you plan to retrieve them in a particular order. Okay. So what is happening here is that I want to know how many students do we have? Remember when we talked about dot length? Yeah. So dot length does not just exist on a string. You can also use it on an array. So the number of students here is students dot length. So that is the length of the array. So when we have the length of the array, now we know how many times we can iterate over the array. So these are for loop. Okay. So we will talk about loops just in a bit. But basically what you're doing, we are going inside the students, the marks, what is passed in, what we call marks, and we are checking on each value if it is greater than or equals to 50. Okay. So if it is greater than or equals to 50, we execute this part of the code. This part of the code here at the top here that is saying for something to something is just basically iterating over the list. It is going, basically by iteration, what we mean is that it repeats the execution below here based on the condition that is given. So this middle part is a condition. So as long as I is less than the number of students, we have to do another iteration. Okay. So initially we start when I is 0, and then we iterate until this part becomes false. Okay. That is when we stop iterating. So during our iteration, we were pushing things into the array. So yeah, I think that was what it was supposed to do. What we expected is that the same list that is produced here by the first one, because we are trying to clone the filter part, is also the same code that is supposed to be produced at the bottom part. So what we were getting that at the time, if we were to run this, I think JavaScript. Yeah, so I think this was lesson. I'm running this using Node. I'm sorry if I didn't show you guys how to install Node. I know you guys will figure it out. I think right now I'm very concerned about implementation, and also I am here to defend my reputation for not being able to debug this during the during the other lesson. So we are in lesson 5, so I can see to lesson 5. Lesson 5. So in lesson 5 we have a file called array. So yeah, we can run that. So we can say node array JS. When you run that, yeah. So there's a difference. Okay. What is happening here is that the first part of the list is giving us exactly what we want, but the second part is giving us something different. So I'm going to debug it right now. Array. So we are nesting the array. So we have an array of arrays, which is not what we expect. Very, very, very different from what we expect. What we expect is that we only have one array, and it has the students' marks, and it has student marks which are above 50. So I think something is happening. Yeah, there is something weird here. So this is the weird part. So we are pushing the whole array that we are receiving here. We were pushing it into the new list, which is bad. I think what we want to push is what we've just checked on top here. So this is what we want to push into the array. So there should be an I somewhere here, not an if. So if you were to save that, yeah, I think that is okay. So if we were to run this, that is exactly what we get. So that is exactly what you get. So as you can see that then the new list of the students using the filter function, is giving us 90, 80, and 60. Using our custom function is giving us 90, 80, and 60. So if you're writing code, like you are doing your own programming, you're writing code for a given program or something like that, you will always have to do this. Writing how many lines of code? These are 10 lines of code. So 10 lines of code, and somebody has just done it with one line because he understands the inbuilt functions in JavaScript. So this inbuilt function saves us a lot of lines because basically they're just evaluating to the same thing. So sometimes I think it is just better to use the inbuilt functions because in fact it is cleaner. Yeah, this is very clean. Yeah. So we will talk about this. Why is it receiving something that has an arrow and an equal sign? But yeah, so we will come back to this so that we can understand better. Remember what we've talked about. We've talked about a function. So a function is just a block of code that we can always use as well. So you can imagine that somebody comes here where he's calling the function, marks as evaluator, and writes the whole code for the function. So what functions help us do is that they help us to be able to call functions without actually rewriting the whole thing. So we save a lot of time by just calling them. So once we've written this once, we can call it severally. Yeah, we can call it a second time, a third time, a fourth time, and it will always work. Yeah, so I think I've debugged that. Yeah, that was a big mistake on my part. I think I confused. I was very tired. I don't know how I didn't notice that. So basically, that other time, what we were doing, we were pushing the whole array. We were pushing the whole array that we've gotten here into the new array, into the new list that we have here. So which was not what we wanted. What we wanted was to push only values that are greater than 50. And in our case, the value that is greater than 50 will be determined by the if statement. And once it is determined by the if statement and we are sure that it is greater than or equals to 50, we place it in the new list by just pushing it. So push adds the number to the back. Okay, so it adds the number from the back. You can also use, I think there's something called shift. Yeah, shift. So shift does the same thing except it places the value from the front. So we have this array, so you can place the values from the front so that 90 becomes at the very end. So if you were to run this, I think yeah, I'm also getting another bug. So remove the first, or shift is removing the first element from the array. So what I normally do is just come to your MDN docs, MDN documentation. This will always save you a lot of time, or you can just GPT. Something you don't really need to cram. You can actually you can be excused for not storing it in your head. If you're not sure, just come and Google. Yeah, so arrays. So we have arrays functions. Yeah, so this is where I normally get most of the information, more information about what I want. I'm not seeing exactly what I want very close. So I'd use another way I normally do. So we have copy within every field, find in each, join, keys, map, push, shift. So removes the first element from the array and returns it. Slice, we remember we talked about it. Reverse reverses the elements in the array in place. Sum, sorts, place. I think I've forgotten how it's called. I don't know. Find. Yeah, but I think you just check and I think you'll find one. But I normally use push most of the time. So yeah, that's basically it when it comes to, I don't know what we were talking about, arrays. Yeah, arrays have different functions that you can perform on them. An example is push, an example is shift, an example is map. But yeah, you can always explore all of those. So most common cases where we normally do this sort of what is it? Yeah, this sort of chaining is when we are dealing with strings, as I've mentioned here, or array processing. Yeah, this is very common when dealing with strings and array processing. So yeah, you should be ready to meet with them. You'll find them in code that you've written, and sometimes you will find them in code that other people have written, and sometimes in code that you yourself you've written. So we've been using logical operators, but we haven't really tackled what they mean. Logical operators are used to combine, and we have the and, the or, and not. So I'll just create another, I don't know, another file or something like that. We can say logical operators. Yes. So logical operators, we have what we call the logical and, which we normally use two ampersands to represent. I think the logical and. I can put this in quotes so that it makes a bit of sense. So now we have the logical and. Another thing we have is the logical or. So what we have usually when we talk about or, we normally use these two bars. Yeah, my font appears italics, but they are actually I don't know how we call this. They bars or something like that. So two lines, two bars. The one that is in my keyboard, I think it is next to shift, and then we have the logical not. Logical not just negates things. So if you have something that is true, it will change it to false, and vice versa. If you have something that is false, it changes it to true. So these are very common, especially if we're writing if statements. Okay. So assuming that we have, for example, something like a const student 1, and student 1, let's say, has 30 marks. And then we have const student 2, and let's say they have, let's say 90 marks, and you are planning to award the class. So you can always use an if statement. You can say if either one, in fact, let me write the comment. So you can decide that if either of the two students has gotten, let's say, marks above 50, award the class. Yeah, I've written class badly, but I'm correcting it. So award the class. Yeah, so that is something you can decide you want to do. This is how I used to write my code long time ago. What I would do is that I would write comments just explaining to myself what I want to write. So basically, we want to check if either of the two students have marks that is greater than 50 so that we can award the class. Or you can decide that, you know what, we are only going to award the class if all the students, in our case, we only have 2 students. So all the students have marks above, what was the pass mark, 50? Yeah. So this is another statement. They are very different. The first statement is saying we want to award students as long as there is one person that has marks above 50. The second statement is different. It is saying the only way we are going to award the class is if all the students, which in our case here are 2 students, yeah, have marks above 50. That is one. So I'm using these 2 things because the logic in them determines how we write it in code. So this is how you would write this in code. If you are checking for this condition, you would start with if, and then there's a term here, either. Now, if it is either, you know that you're supposed to use or. Yeah. In fact, it's just a coincidence that either is normally followed by an or, either something or something. So if student one or student 2, if student 1 or student 2 has marks above 50, now we have to check individually for both of them. Now we have to check if this guy has marks above 50 or if this guy has marks above 50. You have to check for both. So if this condition is true or this other condition is true, then we can now evaluate this part of the code. Okay. This is what will help us to evaluate this statement. So if you have a statement like this where you're saying we only want to check, we want at least one of them to be correct. So if this is correct or this is correct or both of them are correct, then execute the part of the code. Okay. So the first condition could be correct. The second condition could be correct, or both of them could be correct. That is when we execute what is below the code. Maybe we can console.log and we can say that award the class. Yeah. So that is what an or operator does. So or, this is a logical or. It's about logic. It's about the logic of the statement. So the logic of this statement was saying that if one of the students, just one, we only want one, at least one of them to get marks above 50 for us to student 1, yeah, he has failed. Student 2 definitely has passed, has gotten a marks above 50. Our statement was saying that if either of the 2 students has gotten marks above 50, award the class. So we expect that if this if statement will evaluate and we will execute the part of the code that is enclosed by the curly braces is presented. But sometimes the teacher can say, you know what I want to do is that I will only award the class if everybody in the class has marks above 50. So yeah, let's implement that. So we can just comment out this part of the code and write a new one, or we just leave it. We'll comment it while we execute the other part. So we can say if, open your brackets, and we know that we're only going to award the class if all the students have marks. So in our case, we have 2 students. So what we need here is that both our students need to get marks above. Give you a signal. Here you can always look for words like either, at least. You can always find words like those, and they will always give you a clue that perhaps you should use an or. But here you can always find words like and. In fact, I wrote this badly. This one is normally in capital letters. When you do discrete maths, usually they like writing these in capital letter. Yeah, so the logical and, the logical or, and the logical not. So here you just look for conjunction words like and. So you can also look for both. Yeah, and so on and so forth. You'll just see the pattern. Here we look for, yeah, you can guess not something, or inverse. These are words, keywords that can always help you determine which one of these you're going to use. So as you can see, programming, this is where now programming meets the real world very closely. Because when you see a problem, you must first be able to interpret the problem. You must be able to interpret, are we looking for only one student? Are we looking for both students? Are we looking for all the students? You must be able to translate what you're talking about into a statement, if possible. Okay. Now, once you've translated it into a statement, you can now decide, okay, this is what will happen. This is what will happen. Here we are looking for just one, so we can say or. So this part or this part, either of them can evaluate. If either of them evaluates to true, we execute our code. But here we want both. We can just take this part of the code, just similar, very similar. I'll just scroll a bit up so that we can see. But now remember, this is not the sign that we use while trying to evaluate the logical and. The logical and, we normally use two ampersands. Yeah, this is very common in so many languages. In fact, all the languages I have used, I am yet to see if this is the same in PHP. But when you, yeah, it is the same in PHP. By the way, I saw that today in W3 schools. But this is transferable. This is transferable content. In almost all languages you will meet, this part will always remain the same. They will always use two ampersand to mean and two bars to mean or, and an exclamation mark to mean not. I'm not saying that it's a sure thing, but trust me, most languages have this implementation. I've done a bit of Java. I've seen this. When you do C, you will see this. I saw this in C++. This one I also saw in Golang. JavaScript, the same thing. TypeScript is just JavaScript. Yeah, so it's the same thing. PHP is the same thing also. So you can always, these are some of the content that you need to understand well, because you will meet is when we can implement this part of the code. So if student 1 is greater than 50 and student 2 is greater than 50, then we can do this part of the code. Okay. Yeah. So let's see what we can do. So here we can console.log and we can print a word, the students, because both have marks above 50. Yeah, we can put an else here so that we can check for the other case. So when you place an else here, anything that does not fit on the if will go directly to the else. So else we can console.log neither okay, let's say could be one or both of the students failed to reach the pass marks. Yeah. So yeah. So if this statement ever evaluates to false, we know that it could be that one or both of the students failed to reach the pass mark. But if it evaluates to true, then it's because the award is given because the students both have marks above 50. I think this can be framed much better. Let me use better English that is a bit similar to what we have below. So you can say that both, we are sure that both of the students have reached the pass mark. Yeah, so that's it. So if we were to execute this code, we expect that what will happen is that we will have both our students, student 1 who was 30 and student 2 who was 90 to be tested. Our first test will check if student 1 student one's marks is greater than 50 and student two's marks is greater than 50. If both are true, then we will log out and we will say both the students have reached the pass mark. But if even one of them has marks lower than 50, then we log out. Could be one or both of the students failed to reach the pass mark. So if we execute this, I think this part will execute. You just can just comment that part that logs to the screen. So if we execute this, yeah. So if we execute this, I think this is much better. So move that part. Yeah, I think we have better English now. We can say that one so one or both of the students have failed to reach the pass mark. So if we come here and student one and we give them both marks above 50 and we give this guy 51, we say this guy that this guy barely managed to reach the pass mark, but at least he or she made it. So if we were to run this now, the result will be different. And the pass mark was 50. Yeah. So logical operators are very important. These are the foundation of almost everything you're going to do. That is why they are in other languages. This is not a feature specifically for JavaScript. This is something that you will meet in so many other languages. Yeah. So in languages must give us ability to check for conditions. And sometimes the best way to represent the conditions that we want to check, especially if we're checking for more than one condition, is to apply these logic operators. Yeah. If you're doing anything, let's say you're doing computer science or any of that, you will meet these maybe in discrete math when you're doing discrete math, or if you're doing any other course that you met these as a unit. You're taught so many complex things, but I think this is simple. This is very simple compared to what I saw in discrete maths. It's much complicated. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's it. That's it when it comes to logical operators. I want to read the content on the notes, but I know there are just so many examples and so many definitions that you will read and you'll find out. Yeah, we've not discussed the not. Now, the not, as we've said, negates a statement. So assuming I'm just commenting this code so that it does not blind what I'm trying to do. Assuming we have a variable like I keep using the example of students because I'm trying to be as consistent as possible so that you understand. So let's say student passed, and let's say this is a boolean, and initially you declare it to be true. Yeah. If you were to log this console.log and you were to log out student passed, what would appear on your console or on your browser if you're using HTML to display or using the console on the browser? What would be printed out is true because you are declared it to be true. But sometimes you want to negate it. You can negate it, and how we negate it is we give it an exclamation mark. Let's say const, and you say inverse. The inverse of that, you just say an exclamation mark and then what you want to invert. So we want to inverse the student passed part. So when you do this and you print out this one, JavaScript will just ignore this part. So we want to print the value of the inverse. So basically what we're saying here is the inverse part is just negating the value held by the student passed part. So what happens is this is what will be displayed, false. So false is what will be displayed. This might look like a small thing, but trust me, it is very, 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 very important. Sometimes you just want to negate. Sometimes you just want to negate things. So you would use this exclamation mark. This exclamation mark gets the Boolean value of what is after it, and then it negates it. So if it was false, if initially it was false, what we expect is that when we run this, what is output is true. Yeah. So that is what it does. It just does the opposite. if you were to negate it here and then you come again and you negate it here, I don't know why I'm using the word negate. Yeah, negate is just okay. Anyway, it's a mathematical term also. Just multiplying it by another negative, yeah, something like that. So if you were to do that, you will just, yeah, you will just be undoing the effect of the exclamation mark that you had used before. So we just expect it to be the same value it was before, because you've done it twice here. You've used the exclamation here and the exclamation mark here. So you've just gotten the inverse of that given thing. So the value will still be false, the original value that we declared. Yeah, so that's basically it when it comes to logical operators. So logical operators, we mostly use them when we mostly use them especially when you have you are trying to turn something into a code. You're trying to turn a certain logic, a certain statement, or I don't know, when you're analyzing something and you realize, okay, teachers can only cane students when they are late or when they are making noise in class, something of that sort. So you have to interpret that and turn it and find a way of using the logical operators to evaluate them. Yeah, but it's a very simple thing to master. It will become yeah, very close to, it will become very obvious as time goes by, especially when you write more code. Yeah, so that's basically it. So so that when somebody asks you, it becomes easier to explain. The OR operator returns true if at least one of the operands is true, otherwise it returns false. Yeah, so these are just examples, practical examples. Checking multiple conditions, you can actually combine them. So age here is 20 years. So it will say here that it is true. So you will have like a comment somewhere here, true. So it will say that is true, and then it will write the two ampersands, and then it will check has permission. Does it evaluate to true or false? It will say, okay, this thing evaluates to true. This part evaluates to true. So the right part, this part evaluates to true. The left part evaluates to true, and also the right part evaluates to true. So what happens is that when you try to log this, when you try to run this code, the first part of the code will be evaluated because both sides are true. Okay. Yeah, let me just write that. I think for people who have not done discrete math, I think that will really help you. So usually what we say is that when you're trying to evaluate if the results of an AND, the results, how to evaluate and the AND operator. So basically the AND operator only returns true, if both sides and the right is true. That is the only time that the AND will return false. Else, let me just use terms we are now familiar with. Else, it will return false. So remember that. So the AND returns true only if both sides, the left and the right part of the AND. So if you have like the right, and then you have and then you have left. I don't know why I'm confusing the left and the right. This is the left, this is the right, and then in the middle we have the operator. So if the left and the right both evaluate to true, then the result of all of the whole operation will be true. Okay. The OR okay. So how to evaluate the OR operator? So what the OR operation? So what happens is that, yeah, only, okay, let me use true. So returns true as long as when at least one of the sides evaluates to true. So if you have let's say an operation and the left side evaluates to true, and then you have the OR, and then the right side evaluates to true, these will still evaluate to true because it returns true when at least one of the sides evaluates to true. So if we have true at least in one side, we return true. Even if we have one false here, we've said that at least one of the sides to return true. Yeah. So this is a good example of an OR operator that will return true. So this will always evaluate to true as long as one of the sides is true. But when you're using AND, both sides have to evaluate to true for you to say that the whole thing is true. Okay. Yeah. So that is just yeah, something you'll meet in discrete maths if you're going to do computer science, in case you haven't done that unit. So that's okay. The not, it's I think it's the most obvious one. It just negates the thing. So here it was false, and then you do a not on it. You expect it to display a true because it has just inverted. It has just found the inverse of what was originally there in terms of Boolean. So if it was true, it returns it to false. If it was false, it returns it to true. So there is another operator that we've not talked about. It is called the assignment. Okay, we've used it, but I know what this section wants to talk about, so I'll just go directly into it. So remember what we've been doing. Look at what we've been doing. We've been saying const. Let's say student passed, and we are using an equal sign to say, okay, it's equals to false. What we are doing here is we are doing what we call assignment. An assignment. What we are doing here is an assignment. We are assigning student passed the value false. But sometimes you don't want to assign it. You want to compare two things. You want to compare. In fact, let me create a new file and let's just do it on. Okay, we can just do it here because they are all operators. So assuming we have a student const student one has an age of, let's say, 90. Then const student two has an age of 90. And you want to check if these two students are of the same age. Remember what we've used. We've been using greater than, we've been using a less than, we've been using a greater than or equals to, forgive mine. We've been using less than or equals to, but we've never really compared something to check if they're equal. So there's a way to do that, not just in JavaScript, in other languages. So we call it the equality operator. So you can say if student one something, I just want to place it student two. So you want to check if they are equal. Now, usually in most languages, we can't do this because this is what when you do this, you are assigning. Basically, you are saying student one should have the value that student two has. That is what you're saying. You're not comparing anything. So this is not what we want to do. What we want to do here is compare the two. Now, in most languages, you would use two equal signs. In Java, in C, C++ also, Go, you will use two equal signs. But in JavaScript, JavaScript is a bit weird because now you have to use three equal signs. Yeah, because most of the time when you want to compare two things and you want to check if they're equal, I would advise just use three equal signs, because what JavaScript does, it does something called type coercion. So during type coercion, sometimes it changes both sides to be of the same type before it compares it. So let's just try this. Let's try this. Let's console.log. Let's console.log this out and see what it produces. You can see say the two students are equal. The two are equal. The two students was it marks or was it age? Age is equal. So we are using the three equal signs. Okay, so when we try to log this out into the terminal, let me just clear my screen. So when you try to log that out in the terminal, what you find that is that the two students age is equal. Okay, now look at this weird thing. Okay, assume somebody came and did this. So one part is a string, the other part is a number, and we are trying to compare the two. Now look at what JavaScript wants to do. Okay, so when you run this with only two equal signs, if you run this with only two equal signs, JavaScript is saying that the two students age are equal, yet one of them is a string and the other one is a number. So what JavaScript did, it converted them to be of the same type before it compared them. Held in that given variable at the same. But when you use three equal signs, you are checking for both the value and the type, so that if we have something that is a string and we have something that is a number, they will not be equal. So if you are to run this, you get that you get no output. Maybe we can log this part out. Say else console dot log. If you were to run this, you can always get in your program because you forgot to place the other equal sign. My advice is simple. Always use the three equal signs unless you're very sure of what you're doing. Unless you're very sure of what you're doing and you specifically, it will also do something called type checking. Type checking. So it will check that the two things are of the same type. Okay. Yeah. So I hope that is clear. I think I should repeat that again. This value is a string. This value is a number. Even before you compare if the value are the same, it should tell you you cannot compare. But unfortunately, in JavaScript, what the engine does, it suppose this compares the two equal. So if you do this, you get affected result. The two students, both sides are the same, and you evaluate that. I think where is my terminal? Okay, yeah. And you evaluate both sides. You find that they are string, the other one is a number. So yeah, I want you to be keen on that. Be very keen. We've been doing this almost the whole course. We've been assigning things. We've been saying X should hold the value 10. So you can think of X as a container. So there's a container somewhere. We are assigning it the value 10. We are telling it comparing equality, but you're not comparing types. Okay, so compares if two values are equal, it performs type coercion if the values are of different types. Okay, so you get something like this. This evaluates to true in JavaScript. Okay, so that is why these are languages like knows that this is a string and this is a number. for both the type. It will check for both the type and the value. So first of all, it will check, are they of the same type? If they are not, if they are they of the same value, it will do both of those checking. So my advice is simple: always use this one. Always use this one, unless you are very sure of what you're doing. Avoid the 2 equal signs in JavaScript. Always use the 3 equal sign. That is my advice to you. It will help you avoid a lot of bugs. Just put it in your head that by default, I want to have 3 equal signs when I'm comparing 2 things to check if they're equal. Unless I have a very good reason, I will avoid the 2 equal signs. Okay. Yeah. So that's it. And then we have the inequality. Yeah. Inequality is basically checking if 2 sides are not equal. So here we are checking if this side is equals to this side. What if you wanted to check if student 1 is not equals to student 2? Yeah, so you can check it like this. You can say if student, let me just scroll a little bit. If student 1 is not equal, remember we said that this means a not. So not dot log the 2 students are not equal in age. Okay, so this is helping us to check if the 2 things are not equal. So we can run this. Yeah, so it is telling us the 2 values are not equal, because the not equal, the inequality operator also checks for the type. So you cannot confuse it, unlike this other one that we were using only 2 equal signs. This one you cannot confuse it. Yeah. So that's it. Yeah. So just a moment. Logical operators, unless I'm forgetting another one. Let me check if there's another one. So this is an inequality operator, very important. So it is checking if 5 is not equals to 5. Yeah. So compares if 2 values are not equal. Yeah. Okay. This part also performs type coercion. So to be safe, we normally use the 2 equal signs. Yeah, we normally use the 2 equal signs, as we will see later. So you'll find that 5 okay, compares if 2 values are not equal. It performs types coercion if the values are of different types. So if we have the syntax, we're saying value 1 is not equals to value 2. Yes, just my we are trying to check if student 1 is not equals to student 2. We already know that student 1 and student 2. I hope it's false. Okay. So student 1 is not equals to student 2. We know that student 1 is not actually equals to student 2. Okay. So this should evaluate to, is it false or true? Yeah, I'm getting confused. Looking for inequality, and use the 3 equal signs when you're comparing for equality. Yeah, I'm getting distracted by something. So this one performs types coercion, so it will convert them into the same type and evaluate to the same thing. So if you want to use the strict inequality, you use the 2 equal signs. I would always prefer, by default, always use the strict inequality. It will save you a lot of errors. That it will help you avoid a lot of errors in your code. make your life a bit easier. So here's a brief summary of basically what we are trying to do. We use this for assignment. We use without type coercion. Yeah. So that's basically it. You can look deeper into it. I'm just brushing over it. So we are going to learn now about loops. So we've been using loops all over. Like you can. How do you know when you're supposed to use a loop? When you find yourself you're looking at a given thing and you know it will repeat so many times, that is when you want to use a loop. So a good example of loops. So basically, we normally have a loop. There are some other ones. I don't know if I should place it on the list, but we also have a do while loop, under for loop, something also related to for loop so much. We have for each loop, for each loop. Yeah, that is also very common. Yeah, unless I'm forgetting another one, we have while loop, do using each an infinite loops, for loop. Okay. Main ones. In fact, I'll remove this one. We will talk about it later. I think the two main ones I use almost very regularly are do loops and while loops. Yeah, they can basically do everything you want. And at some point you can just use for loop for everything. It is very possible to use for loop to do almost everything. In fact, in Go, the other language that I'm doing, in Golang, we don't even have a while loop. We don't even have a while loops. We are doing everything with for loops. So the language does not even have a while loop. So we are doing everything with for loops. We have different ways, and we even have way to range of a given set of things. Yeah. So this is basically it. So a while loop, the syntax looks like this. So you just write while, and then you give a condition. You decide whether or not you want to execute the part of the code. So this is how it looks like. So you write the word while, and then you give a condition. So assuming you wanted to print numbers from 1 to 10. So if you wanted to print numbers from 1 to 10, print numbers. Let's say checker. So it's a bad name, but you can check. Say ten. While checker is less than 10, do the following. So we can console.log that given value of the checker. Plus 1, because we printed a checker to be let us just experiment and see what happens. So what happens here, you can say checker plus plus to increment.
Divi, you're breaking. I don't know if it's your internet, but you're breaking.
+1. So remember what I told you, when you use a const, you are not allowed to reassign a value to that given a value. So here, when you run it this way, you'll see 1 to 10. You can do it like that, or you can do it the professional way. Instead of writing that whole line, you can just come here and write checker ++. Yeah. So instead of writing a checker is equals to
Let's give Lily a minute. I think he has network issue. So as we wait for him to reconnect, maybe if anyone has any question, you can type it in the chat, or you can open your mic and ask as we wait for David to reconnect. Any question at all? Okay, I think there's no question. Any comments? Especially since today is our last session. Okay, no comments either. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you for the feedback. Thank you so much for the feedback. I think it is very important to know that the the series has had an impact. Thank you so much. Okay, the SATs. So the number of people that voted versus the number of people that have been attending is questionable. Yes, so we left a pending confirmation on the SATs, but I'd like to know how many people in this call would want them. So let's have the conversation after the session, because I can see Devi is back and I do not want to interrupt. So yes, we'll have the conversation after he finishes. Devi, back to you.
Lost electricity, so unfortunately I was in the dark. My room is already dark, so I didn't even notice that there was no electricity. But yeah, I'm back. So I don't know where I was. I was talking about something about loops. I think I'll start again. I don't know from where I was disconnected. Yeah. So I was saying something about post implementation and pre implementation. Yeah. This does not matter so much unless you're planning to assign it to a given thing. If you want to say like something is equals to maybe plus plus. This is why you should be very concerned about pre-incrementation and post-incrementation. But if you're just incrementing like in a loop, like you're doing a while loop, the way you're doing it here, yeah, you can pick any. You can actually pick the pre-incrementation or the post-incrementation. This is much more common. It is much common to find checker being written fat and then plus plus. Yeah, it can be anything. It can be another name. So what you're doing is that we are declaring a checker to be 0, and then we are telling our JavaScript that while checker is less than 10, we want to print the value of checker plus 1. If I didn't print this, if I didn't add 1 here, what will happen is that we would start from the value 0, because it will come here and check, okay, checker is still less than 10, and then it will execute this part of the code and it will evaluate to 0. So the first time it runs, it will evaluate to 0, and then it comes here and it increases the value of checker by 1, so we have a 1 here. So the next time, it does not go back to this part of the declaration. It goes back to the part of where it was checking the condition. So it will go back to line 9 and check again. Is the value of checker less than 10? The value of checker will be 1. So it will ask itself, is 1 less than 10? It will be true. Yeah, 1 is still less than 10. So it will come here. So when it logs the value as 1, and it goes to this line, and what happens is checker is increased by 1. So we have here the value will be 2. So this keeps going on, and you remember we'll be printing the values from 0. So when you get to 8, it will come and check, okay, is 8 less than 10? And it will be true. So we'll have values up to 8. Then we'll have 8. It will check, is 8 less than 10? True. So it will come here and increase 8 to a value 9. After increasing it to a value 9, it will come again and ask itself, is 9 less than 10? It will be true. So it will print 9. So it will print for us 9, and then it will go to the next part where it is increasing the value. So the value of 9 will increase to 10, and then it will come here and ask itself, is 10 less than 10? Which is false. So it will stop from there. It will break from the loop. And have I saved? Yeah, I have not saved. So I need first to save my work, and then I run the same code, and you get the values from 0 to 9. So this is what you get, the values of 0, 1, 2, 3 up to 9. So that is what happens when you you should know the behavior. What I didn't want this, I wanted it to print values from 1 to 10. So what I did, I just added a 1 here. So I said any value you evaluate and find it fits the description, just add 1 to it, and we can it will do the same. So we will have 1 to 10. So we will have 1 to 10 instead of 0 to 9, which I didn't want. Yeah, so that's what a while does. That's what while does. So this same code can be written using a for loop in a much cleaner way. So for loop basically can write this in a much for. You just start with the word, write your brackets. You'll have the curly bracket. So inside the bracket here, there are 3 things that we must write. The first thing we must write, this part of the code, the initial value of checker. So you can say the initial value of checker, it's 0. So you can declare it in 0, and then you place a comma, and then you say the condition that you want to check. You want to check if checker is less than 10. So you can just copy that part of the code, not a comma actually, you place a semicolon. Then you check if checker is less than 10. It's weird to arrange it like this, but it's okay. And then this part, you place it at the end. Copy this part, the incrementation or the decrementation, and then you don't end with a semicolon here. You just, so the for loop is a bit cleaner, especially in this specific problem, whereby we have something we want to initialize, we want to check if the condition is met, and then we want to increment. We want to print that given number while adding one, and then we want to increment. So these two things will have the same behavior. So if I was to comment this out and then save and then run the code, yeah, we have the numbers 1 to 10. It has the exact same behavior. So a for loop has a specific way in which we arrange things. The first part, the declaration and assignment. Declaration and assignment. Then the second part is the condition. And then the third part is the incrementation. Implementation. Just highlight this. Incrementation. Yeah. Is that okay? Okay, so we have the incrementation and we have the decrementation part. So it can be either of these two. You can decide to decrease the number from, let's say you can start from 10. You say, okay, we want to start from 10 and we want to get up to a point where we want to check if the number is less than 0. And then instead of increasing it, we want to decrease it. So you can do checker minus minus from the largest number to the smallest number, that given list. So I think we console.log checker +1. Here we just have checker. Yeah, can save that. Yeah, I think we can run this. Any error, debug. I'm running which file? .js. So let checker be equals to 10. If checker, okay, so this should change. I think let me write the other way. If checker is greater than 0, while checker is greater than 0. The other time we were logging out nothing because 10 was greater than 0. So here we want to check, as long as we want to give a condition that as long as the value that we are in is not less than it is still greater than 0, then continue printing them out. So we can look that checker minus minus. I don't know why I'm getting it wrong. So checker is equals to 0. Let checker be equals to 10, and then while checker is greater than 0, reduce the value of the checker, then console.log. You can save that. Yeah, so it starts from 10, it goes to 9, it reduces it to 8, to 7, up to 1. So what is happening here is that the first time we are running this code, checker is at 10. So once the for loop starts running, this part of the code is almost like ignored. So we will no longer have this part. We'll just be checking the condition. So it starts as 10. The value starts as 10, and then we check, is 10 greater than 0? Yeah, true. 10 is greater than 0. So it logs out the value of 10, and then it reduces. So there's kind of like a bit of so what happens is that first we start with the declaration, we check if the number is greater than 0, then we execute our code is when we decrement. That is why the first value was 10. So we check, is our value greater than 0? Yes, it is greater than 0. So we log it out as 10, and then we reduce the value of the checker by 1. This minus here is a decrementation. So we decrement the value of 9 of 10 by 1, and we get a 9. Then we go to the next loop. So the next loop, we come back in the condition part and we check, is the value greater than 9? If it is greater than 9, we print 9, and then after printing 9, this part is the one that prints the 9. After printing the 9, we remove this part. After printing the 9, we decrement it by 1, so we have a 8. Yeah, so we continue doing that until we reach a position whereby the value is greater. So we will have something like so we reach somewhere where we have 1. So when you have 1 and the condition we have in the condition, we check, is 1 greater than 0? Yes, 1 is greater than 0. Decrement it. So when you decrement it, we find that, yeah, there are things here. So dot, can place a few dots. So there are a few numbers there. I've ignored them. I just want to go to where it fails. So it checks, is 1 greater than 0? Yeah, it is greater than 0. So if it is greater than 0, decrement it. So we have the value going to 0. And then it comes again to check, is 0? Now the next number it uses to check is the 0. So it asks itself, is 0 greater than 0? No, 0 is not greater than 0. 0 is actually equal to 0. So it is very strict. We told it only continue the loop when checker is greater than 0, not when it is equal. So it will come here and check if it is 0, and that will cause it to return a false here. And once false is returned here, it exits from the loop. So that's how loops work actually. So that is why we have our numbers printing from 10 to 1, because we can't print anything that is not greater than 0. Yeah. So that's it when it comes to for loops. So this is this was a while loop. Where is it? This was a while loop. The same concept we've used. You can use a while loop, you can use a for loop. But again, another advice I can give you, by default, just try to use a for loop unless you really need to use a while loop. Yeah, sometimes you really need to use it. It is more convenient to use. Sometimes you just use a for loop, or you just become like me and try to use a for loop almost everywhere you can. Yeah. So those are the two main ones. These ones you will meet in other languages. They are always there. The do while loop. So normally you say do, then you do something, and then you give the while part. So you say while, then you give the condition. So you can do console.log. Just comment this out. This is not common. Nobody uses this. I think it is very difficult to read sometimes. So you can start with the const. Let's say value. You can start with value as 0. And then what you can do is you can log out. We said we don't use const because we're going to reassign. So you can say that. So you can log out value as long as value is less than 10. Let's place less than or equals to 10. Yeah. So the first time we start doing an incrementation or a decrementation to help us here. So once the value is printed as 0, I think we can just increment it first. You can just say value plus plus. Yeah. So the first time the value, yeah, I think this will work, almost give us the exact same behavior. So this is a do while loop. The reason why there is an 11 here is because unlike in the while loop where we were checking the condition before doing anything, for a do loop, it first does something is when it checks the condition. So there's always that one extra part that is checked. I think if I place here less than like that, we can ignore the 11 part. So if you wanted it to have the same behavior as the previous one, yeah, you just do that and you'll print from 1 to 10. So you can explore these loops. We rarely use these. Please, if you, unless you are, it's weird. It's hard to read for me. I think you can always get away with only using the while loop and the for loop. Yeah, and you can sometimes always get away with using just using the for loop. It is enough most of the time when you want to iterate. Yeah. So one of the biggest challenges, not challenge, but one of the most interesting tasks I ever did was somewhere when we were in, I don't know, a pyramid using stars. Yeah, we were told to log out something like this. This is a triangle one. We can try this first. So you want to log this out. How would you log it? I mean, how do you log this out? Why is it spoiled again? Okay, you can place a space so that highlight. Um, so you want to log out something that looks like a triangle. This part, yeah, I hope you can see the stars appearing as a triangle. So this is a good challenge. You can always use this to practice on your skills on how a cube. Um, I'm trying to write it so that we can try and see if we can. I think this is the simplest we can get. So you want to print something that looks like a cube, but a cube of stars. So you know that it has how many rows? One. It has how many columns? 1, 2, 3, 4. So it has 4 columns and it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 rows. So it is a square. So you want to print this out in the console. So how would you do it? This is an implementation. This is an example of an implementation. There's actually several ways you can do this. You can say for, and you can start with, I like using for loop, so I'll be using it most of the time. So let I to be equals to 0. And I want to print it until here we are starting from 0. So we want to print it until it is less than how many? 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4. And then you can place your semicolon and then you can say I increments. So I will continue increasing until it breaks, until it violates this condition that is placed in the middle. So we can have this and then you can console.log. Yeah, we can console.log a star. So, and you can console and log a star. Yeah. And then you can leave a space on the right. So yeah, so we can try and console log this. So when you try and log that out, yeah, we are getting stars that are arranged how do you call this, vertically. So we are getting 1 star, 2 star, 3 star, 4 stars. So this is not what we want. I was just doing that so that we can see that it repeats the task of printing the stars. So if we want it to appear horizontally, we will need to have another loop inside. Okay, so we need to form another for loop and say that for each and every, what it is doing, it is printing the first row, only printing 1 star. So we can say while it is on the first row, we want it to print other stars. So we can remove this temporarily and we can say while we are in each row, so we want to also print others. So we can say let I to be equals to let I, but you can't use the same variable. So let us use j. So let j to be equals to 0. We want to check, we want to continue looping until while j is less than 4 because it's a square. And then we can say j plus plus. Yeah. So we can have this and then we can log this out. So what basically we are saying, this first loop is for the rows. This second loop is saying in each row that we are going to loop in, print 4 stars. So in each row, it is going to print 4 stars. So when you do this, we expect to see something that looks like a square. So if you are to do that, yeah. So what is happening is that we are not going to the next line. So we need to find a way to go to the next line. So we want it to go to the next line. Currently, everything is being printed on a straight line, which we don't want. So you can come here and say console.log, and yeah, you can use the new line character. The new line character is just / and n. So this will take us to a new line. Okay. Yeah, I think that's okay. Console.log by default usually places things on a new line. Okay. So what we can do, very interesting. So that's the funny thing. So console.log usually takes everything into a new line by default. So we don't even need this. What we need to do is to find a way of printing all the stars into one row. So let me try and do it. So you can say let row stars to be equals to an empty string. So while we are in here, So we can always, what we can do is we can say row stars. We are going to add to it a star and a space. So we are going to add to it a star and a space, and then immediately we exit console.log. We can log that. We can log out the row stars. Yeah, this should do the trick. I think so. So we just declared a string. The reason why we did that is because console.log by default places everything in a new line. So basically what you're trying, we are telling it here, collect all the stars for a given row. So I can change the comment. What we are saying here is that collect all the stars for a single row. So this loop will collect all the stars for the single row, and then once it finishes, we log that row out. And then we go to the next line, because by default, this will take us to a new line. So let's try and see, maybe it can give us another unexpected result. Yeah, so we have this. So the first part, I don't know why it is logged. Yeah, it is this one. This part that is making it a bit weird. So if we try and log that out, yeah, so we have something that looks like a square. So this is what we have. So you can make it do other things. This is one printing only 2, the third one only printing 3, the fourth one printing all of them. Yeah. So there is a very complicated way of doing it. I can show you that. Okay, let me try showing you that. Okay, so what we can do is, we know that the first time we are printing, we only want 1 star. Okay. So we can start with 0. We can start with the 0 from I. So we can say it starts originally from 0. Now that will give us the opposite shape. So we can say it starts from 0. The first part we wanted to print only 1. So we can start from 0 to I. To I, that I'm used to it. So I'm sorry if the implementation is a bit clouded. So we can have something like that. So what I can do is I can add 1 to our I. So we can start from, I think 1. I think, was it +1 or was it -1? Something like that. Yeah, so we have the implementation. So find a way of doing this. Practice, find your own way of doing this, by the way. In our class, when we were taught this, we were doing it with Java. That is why I was confused, a little bit confused, because I didn't remember that console.log usually places things on a new line. When you're doing it in something like Java, you can just log everything on one line. So this is an example of, try doing this, do a lot of practice with this. Try printing triangles, try printing squares, try printing stars. Challenge yourself so that you can understand loops very well. When you do these at least, I don't know, 10, 20 times, you'll be so good at using loops. So many things will be obvious on the implementation. And then find a way of understanding why my implementation. Basically, this is just a trick. I know that on the first part of on the first row, I know that we only need 1 star. So I am telling it, I want you to print all the stars until our value of I, which initially when we start, our value of I is 0, but I'm adding 1. So I'm telling it, on the first row, print from 0 to 1. So it will only print one thing. On the second loop, it is printing from 0, and because this one will be 1 here, so it is printing from 0, this value, to 2. So it keeps doing that. So it will be increasing, because we know that the value of I will always increase. So the stars will always increase as we go down, as we go down, as we go down. Yeah, so this is a good challenge you can always use to practice your skills on how to use loops, especially the for loops and the while loop. Yeah, this can also be done using a while loop. Yeah, I'll leave that to you as a challenge so that you try and implement the same thing using a while loop. Yeah, the implementation is not very different. They are both doing the same thing. Both loops, both are doing iterations. You can force them to basically print that out to the terminal. But yeah, challenge yourself using this example. So as you can see, the first time we printed something weird, and then we fixed it, and then we printed a small triangle, and then made it better. Yeah, so practice on that, and it will help you understand loops even better. So while loop repeats a block of code as long as a specified condition is true. Yeah. So common use cases for a while loop are repeating actions until a condition is met, handling user input validation. Yeah, you can create a loop that keeps asking the user, enter your password, enter your password, enter your password. And I've not talked about infinite loops. Yeah, I think this is where infinite loops comes in. You can always create an infinite loop sometimes as a bug. These can sometimes be as a result of a bug where you have an infinite loop, but sometimes you can also use it as a feature. Let me give you an example of when you can use it as a feature. So I think we've not written HTML and we've not written HTML in a long time. So I think we'll just create two files. Create another folder. So we can create another folder and say something to do with while loops, infinite loops. So inside infinite loops, I'll just create my HTML file. I'll just create an index.html, and then I'll create a script.js. Just a minute. I pause. I need to sort something out. Just a minute. Yeah, sorry for the interruption. Yeah, we were trying to do something, so we can create our script.js file. So in our index.html file, remember by the way, there's another shortcut. You can just write exclamation mark and then tab, gives you almost everything. So what happens here, we can say we are talking about infinite loop. So here we can, we can basically connect our HTML to our CSS by using the script tags. We can have that. And then we can say the source file, so src is equals to just tab, and then it will give us that one. So yeah, so that is our script file. We've created it. So we want to keep asking. We want to create a, I don't know. I'm guessing const. Let's say lucky number. Our lucky number is say number 10. So we want to keep asking the user to guess a value until they get the value as 10. So you can always say window. You can say so const value guessed is equals to window dot prompt so prompt we want to give a message, let's say like guess a number, so number between let's say 1 and 100. Yeah, so yeah, so prompt will return a string. So we can have this. So we want to make it such that a user is always asked for this. So we can say that we can create a while loop. We want to create an infinite loop. We want to create a repeating loop, so we can use a while loop. So I want to use a while loop. So here you can say that while value guessed by the user, while the value guessed by the user is not equals to the lucky number, we want the user to be prompted for this value. So value guessed, can declare this as let. Then we can remove this part. Control X, so we can place that like that. So we can say while the value is not equal, we want to ask the user for a number, and when he or she gives the number, we want to store it in value guessed. So value guessed is going to be equals to to the value that is prompted from the user. So we can say, yeah, I think that's okay. I am not checking for the types, so that is why I've not used double equal sign. Yeah, because by default prompt usually returns a string, so I don't want to do all that type checking. I'm just doing it the lazy way. So this is what will happen. So we can run this and see what we have so that we can fix anything that is wrong. So when you run this, you can use your live server. Yeah, I configured PHP, so yeah, open live server. Yeah, so it is asking us for a number. So guess a number between 1 and 10. So if I give it a value like 90, it asks me again, guess a number between 1 and 10, and I can give it 40. It's wrong. So it asks me again, guess a number, so I can put 50, 10. Yeah, it's correct. So once it's 10, you can give, you can tell the user that they have gotten the number. So what you can do is that, yeah, we can check. So this will continue prompting the user for the value. So let us handle when, let's say, a user guesses the right number. So when the user guesses the right number, that is if the lucky number is equals to the value that the user has guessed. Yeah, don't always use the double equal sign. I'm only using it here because I don't really care about the type that much. I just want the user to type something. So when the lucky number guessed by the user, when the value guessed by the user is equals to our lucky number, what we want to do is we want to give him an alert and tell them your guess is correct. Your guess is correct. Okay. So we can do that, and then we can add a few exclamation marks. Yeah, to make it yeah, a bit fun. So we know that our lucky number is 10. We've stored it there. So this time it tells the user guess a number between 1 and 10. Yeah, so that's the first time, I think. And we ask for the first time the program run, it will ask the user to guess a number between 1 and 10. In fact, I should just highlight the whole thing. So the first time the user is asked, and then the second time the user guesses a number, we can Control Z. We can tell them your guess is wrong. Please try again. Yeah, so you can tell the user that. So you can tell them that, okay, the first time the code runs, it will come. Yeah, we are declaring a variable here. We are also declaring our lucky number to be 10 as a const, and then we are coming here and we are asking ourselves, the value that the user has guessed, is it equals to our lucky number? Yeah, if it is not equal to our lucky number, keep that guy in the loop. So the while will continue running until this part of the condition is violated, whereby the value guessed is equals to the lucky number. So I think this is a much better user experience. So if we come here and we were to refresh our page, so it will ask us guess a number between 1 and 10. So we guess a number like, I don't know, like 40. And when you guess a number, it is telling us that your guess is wrong. Please try again. And we try another number. Maybe we guess 60. And when we guess our number like 10, yeah, it is telling us your guess is correct. Say okay. So that is an example where you want an infinite loop. So this loop will continue running, It will continue disturbing the user until the time this part of the condition, the value guessed, becomes equal to the number. So this part is only checking, are they equal or are they not equal? So if they are equal, and this condition evaluates to false, we just jump out of the loop by default. Yeah. So that is how while is used. That is how an infinite loop can be used. I don't know if that is the example I left in the notes that we're using. We're just checking the count is less than 5. Yeah, something like that. Okay. So summary, while loops repeat a block of code. Yeah, we've already read this, okay? So for loops, basically we've discussed that. We've discussed that a for loop has three parts. The first part is the initialization, the second part is the condition, and the last part is the incrementation. Yeah, it doesn't really need to be an incrementation. Sometimes you can be decrementing. Yeah, so it can be any of those two. Yeah. So this is an example of a program doing some explanations, a few explanations here and there that you can. I think you can do this on your own. I'm really trying to rush so that at least I don't leave most of you with a lot to try and understand alone. At least we've covered a lot. So for loops basically repeats a block of code a limited number of times. Common use case, iterating over arrays. In fact, this is the most common. This is the most common use. When you're reading on your own, please find examples where you can use this. Just go. You can even ask GPT to give you a few questions on how to iterate on arrays, because that is the most common use case for a for loop. Yeah. So repeating actions a specific number of times. So you want to repeat something 5 times. You want to ask the user to try 5 times, like in passwords. You know, there are some phones you try 5 times before you're locked out. Yeah, you can try and simulate that. Try creating that using HTML and JavaScript. You can even style it. Yeah. Or performing iterative calculations. Iterative basically means calculations that repeat, that involve some sort of repetition. Yeah. So for loop is very powerful. The way I've told you, some languages don't even have these other loops. Yeah. They are just using for loops, for loops, for loops, for loops, for everything. Like in Golang. In Golang, we don't have while loops. We only have the for loop, and we're using it to do almost everything because I think it is very sufficient in doing most things. So I need to confirm where we are because yeah, I'm already approaching my limit where I start making very many mistakes. Okay, so what are functions? Basically, we've already discussed function. We just said they're a block of reusable code. So here we're saying a function is a block of reusable code that performs a specific task. So if you can imagine, like in your code, there's something you want to do. Every time you want to do something severally, instead of rewriting the code in every section where you want that implementation, what you can always do is you can use a function. Just declare a function and then define the function. This is how we declare function. Then write the definition of the function. What is the function supposed to be doing? What are the parameters that we expect the function to receive? And then after you've already done all of that, every place you want to do an implementation, you basically just call a function. So functions are very powerful. In fact, most of these frameworks you're going to use will just be using functions to do most of the things. I know right now we are writing HTML. So you can imagine, like assuming you in our HTML here, we have something like a navbar. So you have something like a nav, and you're saying that this is the nav. This is the nav. Yeah. So you have your navbar. Now, I want you to look at the user interface. Why saved? Oh, I can let me disable the JavaScript so that it does not block what I want to say. Control A. So this is our HTML. Okay, you can imagine that just a minute. Open it live. So this is the navbar. So you can imagine that this is the navbar. Of course, this is too small to be the navbar, but you can imagine that in each and every page when you're creating your website, assuming that we were creating this website, this page you will have to write the HTML for the navbar. You go back to the other page, you have to copy all that code for the navbar and write it here. And you have to do that for each and every page. So you can imagine, like, you're building a system for a school and you have like 20 pages. So in each and every page, you're just copy pasting the navbar, copy pasting the navbar, copy pasting the navbar. That is why we have frameworks like React and Angular and Vue. What those frameworks usually do is that they help you turn that given navbar, like for example, the navbar that we have here, into something we call a component. So a component is usually just a function you can call that does the rendering for you. So that instead of copy pasting this code everywhere, you just enclose it in like a specific function or a specific there's a specific way you write the function, so that in each and every page, when you want to use the navbar, instead of rewriting it, you just say, okay, give me the navbar here. So you just go somewhere and say, okay, I'm calling the navbar. I want you to paste the navbar here. So that's what I think that is what you will meet when you start to study most of this framework. You realize that that is like the main goal, dividing things into components, and components are just basically function. Deep down at the core, almost all components that we use, especially the ones that you create, are just functions. Yeah. So that is what I can say about functions. So this example of a function, it is taking two things. Remember what we said, these are parameters, and then it is adding those two things, and it is returning a value. So functions can sometimes return a value. So in our case here, the function called add is returning a value, and the value that is returning is a plus b. So the result is going to be equals to 5 plus 3. That is what will be implemented in the background. So this function can be called severally. You can call it, you can even come and say let result 2 to be equals to add, let's say 100 plus 5 plus 5, and now you can log out result 1, and you can also log out result 2. So not a number, it is saying, so it is adding the values of 1 and 2. Oh yeah, you're not supposed to place the add here. Sorry for that, I was confused. So as you can see, I didn't need to write, I did not. You will always you will always find a way of writing functions. In fact, some languages have taken functions into another level. Most of these are the really highly functional languages. Like for example, in Haskell. In Haskell, these guys are so smart. They are not even using like loops. They're using like recursion to do the iteration. Yeah, you can check on that, and you'll see just how powerful functions can be. A whole language can be based on just functions. Yeah, and they are very interesting things functions do. So this is a way of declaring a function. This is the normal way. There's another way of you can place a function as a variable, because in JavaScript, functions are treated as first-class citizens. So the same way you would treat like an integer, when you would come and declare an integer, you will say that let's say int name is equals to David. The reason why it is being crossed here is because name is a special word in JavaScript. You're not supposed to use special words in JavaScript as variable names. So I can say like say Control Z student name instead of using the word name, student name. So you can declare like there's no int in JavaScript. Sorry, I'm writing so many languages. So assume that you are to declare a variable like this. What it means is that we are storing the value of David into a container whose name is student name. But do you know that the same way you're doing that, you could also do like this. You could just say student name is equals to, and you can say function returns A plus B. We are using the same name, so I can rename this to summation. I can say sum function. Yeah, you can do this in JavaScript. Basically, the same way you are able to store a value to a given variable is the same way in JavaScript you can store a whole function into a given variable. So this is very, 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 very powerful. It makes you be able to do it. So yeah, that is something. I think it is somewhere in our course. I'm just going through it very quickly so that we, in case we do not manage to reach that point, we can always refer to it. So yeah, that's basically it. So this is very common. You will use this a lot when doing things like React. You'll be hearing people doing functional components. And so I want to give you 3 ways. So the same function, the one that we've written here, originally how we would write it, we would do something like this. We would say some function, let's say some function 1, and then we would take 2 parameters A and B, and then after taking A and B, we would do some sort of implementation, maybe return A plus b. That is what we would return. So these two things are the same. Like these, they will both do the same thing. So both of them, if you want to use them, like you want to find maybe the result, const result one. So if you were to find result one, and you say that okay, result one is equals to, use the sum function one, and you give it two numbers. So you give it 10 and 30. You expect that result one will hold the value of 10 plus 30. So that will be 40. That will be 40. So it will log out 40. The same way, sum function 2, we just rename that. You can also call sum function 2, like when you say const result 2 is equals to sum function 2. Just the same way you called the first function, this one also you just call it the same way, and you can give it the same values 2 and 30, and you expect that the result will be 40. Because although the first one was just declared as a function, okay, that is okay. It will still have the same behavior as a function that is assigned to a given variable. So basically, this variable is holding a function. As you can see here, when you hover on top of it, it will tell us that it is taking a function whose argument is a and b, both of any, and returning an any type. Because JavaScript, there's no types, we cannot add up types there and tell it that those are numbers. So if you are to log these two values, you will find that they are the same. So you are to log console.log result 1 and result 2. Yeah. So you can do that. This is called script. I think we can check the folder that we are in. We are in infinite loops. Is that where we are? Like, yeah, we are in infinite loops. So cd into infinite tab, cd tab. Oh yeah, we're in lesson 5, so we can cd out, and then we can check so cd into infinite loop, and then we can node script. Yeah, we can still run the script here. Now you'll see the two values are displayed. Result 1 is displayed as 40, result 2 is displayed as 40. You can declare a function like this. So you can say const sum function 3 is equals to, instead of writing this huge part function, you can just give it a bracket and say a comma b, and then you give it an equal sign with the greater than sign, and then you can just write a plus b. Obviously, we finish with a semicolon. So this will also give you the same result. So if you were to do like const result 3, so and then you use sum function 3. Use sum function 3 and give it the values 10 and 30. You expect that the result will still be the same. You still expect the result to be the same. Yeah. So if you were to log this out, we expect to see 3 40s. So the first one is a 40, the second one is a 40, the third one is a 40. These are 3 ways in which you can write a function. This is called an arrow function. This is what we'll be using mostly when you're doing React or you're doing your Angular. This syntax. So keep it in mind that this is how you can also write a function. It is the shortest one. Just write a bracket. This bracket part will be representing the parameters, and then we have the execution. Now, the reason why this is in one line is because when you only have one line to execute, you can just write it in one line. But if you had more than one line, you can just write your curly brackets. After writing your curly brackets, you can just say return. Yeah, you can say return. Yeah. So this and this, they're very similar by the way. The only thing we've eliminated is the word function, and then we've included an equal sign and a greater than sign here. But this is, I don't like to look at this as a greater than sign. Just look at it as an arrow. It looks like an arrow. So it is pointing to the execution part. This is an arrow function. You don't need to know all of this. You can use. I'm already feeling that we are going to meet here in terms of the functions. Just what I've talked about actually. Yeah. So the last thing I will talk about before we end, because I'm getting past my hour, and I know Diana has a few things to talk to you about. There's something called scope. I think that should be the next thing, if I'm not wrong. So there's something called scope. So let me create another file. So when it comes to scope, basically what you're asking ourselves, how visible is the value of a given variable in your code? If I declare something here, like I say student const student student name, I say student name, and I say the student name is equals to David. Yeah, and I have that, and then I try to log it out. So console.log student name. What we expect is that this console log will be able to find the value of student name. Now, what happens if I create a function? Let's say a function function something, and then that function something is taking in it's not taking anything, but inside here is where you've declared your value. When you run this, you will get an error. It's because the student name, you have declared it inside this given function. So it is not accessible outside. Okay, it is not accessible outside this function. So basically, variables declared inside a function are actually called local variable. This is what we call a local variable. Local variable. So local variables are only available within that given function. But if you were to declare another variable outside here, let's say a const global variable, you were to declare something here like a global variable and give it, let's say the value, my second name, Ochin. Yeah. So our global variable can be accessed by everybody, including a console log that is inside this function. So if you were to try and console.log our global variable, you will be able to do this, okay? But if you try to log out something that is only declared within a given variable, you will not be able to log it out. So everything that is outside can be accessed by everybody, but anything that is declared inside can only be accessed by operations that are inside that given function. Yeah. So that is something you should be very keen on. So I think we'll talk about that. I don't know. Because I'm trying to end this as soon as possible. But if you read more about this, I think the notes are okay. I'm still updating them. I'm still continuing also with the original site that we're going to use for this is just a temporary site, by the way. Just used it because we did not have time. But that's basically what this part of code is this part of the notes is trying to explain to you, is that things can be locally scoped or they can be globally scoped. If it is globally scoped, it is declared outside any function or block of code. So if you declare something here like a global variable, you declare it outside, it can be accessed by everybody. But if you are to locally scope it, like declare it inside only a variable, it can only be accessed within that given variable. So yeah, so I'm sorry for ending the meeting late. Yeah, I have a few projects I need to complete before we go to the weekend. I hope my main aim in doing this session when you're dealing with Diana was to show you how things are actually learnable. Things are actually learnable, very learnable, especially when it comes to programming. With the right amount of work, I think you can continue even without me. The examples are there. You have ChatGPT to help you sometimes when you're stuck. You also have Stack Overflow, which is very important. You have the documentation. You have even YouTube videos and other tutorials. You also have the community. I think if you're very active and you're DMing, and I think you've met a few people who might know a few things you don't, they are very important. They will help you in your journey in programming. Um, this was not my original plan. I did not plan to reach here actually. I planned to talk about so many other things. I had to remove them from the list because I knew that time will not allow us to reach that far. But I am happy with the extent we reached, because the reason why we this session included a lot of beginner stuff is because 90, not even 90, 95% of you guys were actual beginners. Actual beginners. A very small percentage of people and actually knew JavaScript. So I had to start everything from scratch. So that is why when I originally planned, we were supposed only to start with JavaScript, just start everything with JavaScript. There's so many things we haven't done. We were not supposed to do anything to do with the DOM and the synchronous. We were supposed to deal with things like asynchronous code, and I removed the part for closure because that needs a lot of time, and it needs somewhere I can write, because that actually requires you to see what happens when a new execution context is created, and such and such and things. So it's quite unfortunate, but I'm happy with where we have reached. Um, there's still a lot to learn. My advice to you is that this is a very good path to follow. Programming is really good actually. Apart from the content that you get, you can actually make a living from this, make a lot of money. Yeah. So I know most of you want money. Don't lie to me. I know people want money. So there's a lot of there's a lot of reward when it comes to programming. When you can master your craft very well, become good at what you're doing, and yeah, when you reach there also, you give back to the community, you teach other people about what you've learned, and yeah, that will be well with you. Diana was talking something about I think she was talking about I don't know, certificate, something of that sort. Yeah. um yeah, my advice to you, if you can get such a thing, you find a way of getting it, because it will always remind you of the journey that you had already started. You know, it is very easy to look at something that you've already started and say, okay, I did this in and I understood a little bit of JavaScript. I'm not good at it, but at least I have this to remind me that I had made a commitment to myself and I decided I was going to learn programming. At least give yourself something to, something to look back to and say, okay, I'm proud of that. I'm proud I participated in that. And any tech events in terms of hackathon, show up. It doesn't matter if you don't know anything. I remember the first time I went to hackathon, my work was just writing the notes for the group, and we only managed to make files. In fact, the first hackathon I went, nobody in my group returned the second day. So I was there alone. I had to join another group and pretend like I was their member. So participate in tech activities. You people are coming from different school. The guy was coming from I don't remember the school. Yeah, in your school, there are people who do this stuff. So join them, always participate. IEEE, we have women in tech circles. Join there, you will find like minds. Yeah, you can connect with people like Diana. Yeah, so this field is not only like there is this delusion that it is only for the male. No, it's not just that. It's not just that. Anybody can actually do it. In fact, I know a few guys that are way better in programming than I am. So yeah, that's my encouragement to you. It's approaching 10, and I have a few things to do before I sleep. I need to finish up on some work also. A few of you that will be, yeah, you can do things and DM. Some of you are sending very good code. Sometimes I review, sometimes I don't, because I'm busy. But to those people who are sending the code, I was showing you how I would do it, how I would approach that problem. It's not bad. It's not bad actually. So continue doing that, reach out, attend such events. This was just 2 weeks. Come on, 2 weeks. Just stay in the 2 weeks. Check, is there anything new to learn? If Dana or anybody else announces another event for maybe another part for JavaScript, maybe if I change my mind and we come back to continue with what we've not learned, show up, just be encouraged, be self-motivated, find something to do, create things, break things, attend events, ask questions, Google stuff, yeah, and you'll be fine. I can promise you. Now, before I end the call, usually what I have noticed is that people give up too early. You know, at least for most people that I know that actually do programming for more than like 2 years, at least in my age, are usually people in computer science. And it's not because they're doing computer science, it's because they just stayed long enough. The school forced them to stay for more than 2 years, and they had enough time to figure out that, oh, wait, I don't need to know everything to be able to do something, okay? So my encouragement to you is that, especially if you're not doing any computer science related course, do not quit. Just stick there. It might take you 3 months. If you're smart, it might take you a year. It might take you 2 years. But when things click and the worry of not knowing things leaves you, you'll be very well. You'll be doing very well. I can promise you that. It's very difficult. I can't lie. Programming is one of the most difficult things personally I have done, and uh, and I did Kiswahili, so I can tell you this is way harder than Kiswahili was to me back in high school. Yeah, so this is really difficult. I won't lie. Some of you it will take you a short time. Some of you it will take you a long time. But if you just stay long enough, just long enough for things to click, you will figure out your way and you'll choose your own path. Who knows? Maybe web was not meant for you. Maybe you are a mobile guy. Maybe you are a system programming guy. Maybe somewhere here we have somebody like a blockchain developer. Yeah, there are so many careers you can go. Somebody here can be DevOps. Yeah, some of you can even be in cybersecurity, become very good hackers, Red Hat, and yeah, you can do almost anything. Just stay long enough. So you'll have to forgive me. I have to end the meeting. Diana will talk with Diana if she manages to sweet talk me. Maybe we can come back, but I don't think so. I have so many things that are pending actually. That is the reason why I planned for 2 weeks, but when you guys filled the forms, I realized most of you are beginners, so we had to start from scratch. So this content that I planned was supposed to take 3 years. Yeah, somebody is asking about the site being temporary. Yeah, immediately I manage creating the one that you can actually refer to. I will destroy this one. I will not. I will stop. I will stop hosting it. Just go and terminate it because who knows, Manze? It was not. It's not actually ours. Yeah. So but you can use it. You can still use it. There's a mistake somewhere also in the grid part. The notes. The example there is of flex, but I know I noticed, but I was too tired to fix. But the one we are creating, you can participate. By the way, it's going to be open source. I'm just planning to lay the foundation. If you know Next.js, yeah, it's going to be written Next.js. So yeah, I'm happy to meet you guys. Know a few names. So yeah, somebody has raised her hand, Tama. Yeah, yeah, you can talk. You can just talk.
I was hoping to ask the VS Code file folder that you have been working on, the one that we've been learning with. Is it possible for you to share it on Git, please? Then it would be lovely to be able to refer to those files, like the lesson 1, lesson 2, and be able to reference from where we've first seen that code, and the reminder would be really
So I can see,
while
I can submit.
while we practice.
Yeah. So let me just submit this to Git for people who don't know Git, GitHub and Git. Yeah, that's also another separate thing. There's so many things to talk there, merging and committing and rebase, and there's just too many things to learn. So what I'll do, I just use this other terminal. I think it's a bit bigger. Expand it a little bit. So we have our program, we have our folder here. It's called web lessons. So first of all, you have to initialize a Git repository. So Git init. Once you've done Git init, it will tell us that this has been initialized as a Git repository. So I have GitHub CLI. So I'll just use GitHub CLI because I know most people don't know how to use it. So I'll just Control F. So Git repo. This is not the easiest way to do it. There's another way of doing it, which is much simpler, but I usually get so many warnings about not having passwords, so I just like using the Git CLI. So I think I'll just use that one. Go to GitHub. GitHub here, and just use this terminal, this page. Go to GitHub, go to repositories. Once you're in a repository, here's my friends. I don't know what's wrong with them. So you can create a new repo. So once you've already created a new repo, you can call it web lessons, anything you want. So you can call it web lessons, and it will check the visibility and say the name is available. So is few notes. Let's just say beginner. Okay, and then we can make it public. Yeah, we don't want to add a README, then we can create a repository. Once we've already created it, we'll get somewhere here where it is we can add our remote part. So you can come back here, do something like add it as a remote. So once we've already added it, you can yeah. So once we've added it, let me use the terminal on VS Code so that I don't get so many errors. So cd. Yeah, I am moving from one terminal to another to because of permission things. You know, GitHub sometimes disturbs me. So git add everything, git commit dash m sure commit. So you can do that. So we've added that. Then git push origin master. So this will be pushed to GitHub. So you will access them. Okay, you will get them. So just go to the GitHub repo. You will go to my account if you can. If you want to, I will send the link to the repo, and yeah, you will get it. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Davy. The sessions have been really, really, really great. Thank you so much for your time. Yeah, I don't think there's anyone with any other question. Okay, I don't think so. So about certificates, I do not know how many people are still interested because the number of people that polled that they want certificates and the number of people that have been attending are not the same numbers. So yeah, maybe I can get some feedback from you right here. You can raise your hands. That's 4 people. 5, 6 people. Okay, sure. We'll plan more in the group. I'll communicate. So we'll have the group for like a week, where you can ask any follow-up questions, give any feedback or comments, and then after 1 week, I think I'll dissolve the group. So yeah, we can do the planning in the group before the group is dissolved. Okay. Well, thank you so much for attending, and yeah, I'd like to end the meeting now.